the first tutorial you learned how to set up a new document in Photoshop and how to import images into the layout of our Notan project. In this second tutorial, we're going to learn about selection tools. We're going to learn about how to isolate objects within pictures so that they work within our Notan design. Let's get into it. The idea with selection tools is that we isolate certain objects within our picture and erase the other parts. So we're going to learn 3 core selection tools. There are many more, and there are, with all things in Photoshop, many different ways to do things. So I'm just going to throw you these 3. The first one we're going to look at is called color selection. This is where you select a color and you're able to then delete or isolate that color. The second one we'll learn about is the object selection tool. This is a new advanced function of Photoshop which allows the computer to analyze your image and find the object within. And the last, more complex technique we'll learn is the threshold filter, which takes a 3-dimensional representation and converts it into a 2-dimensional black and white, almost like a line drawing. We're going to start with our most simple object of our 3, which is this peace sign. The idea here is that we only have white and black, so we can isolate either of the 2 colors to select just the part of the picture that we need. So I'm going to go over to my layers panel here. If your layers palette isn't up for any reason, you'll just want to go up to Window and click Layers. That will toggle it on and off. So I'm going to make sure that my peace sign layer is selected here, and it'll show me that it's selected. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to my Select menu, come down to Color Range, and that will bring up a dialog box here, which will show us just a rough representation of what we are going to be selecting. So if I clicked on the white area, it'll select anything that is white. Because I'm only on my peace sign layer, everything else is really unimportant. It's just this that I'm looking at. So I'm going to select the black in this area, which will isolate just the black of the peace sign. I have my fuzziness set to 125. Should be good. Okay. So now we've selected the black area of the peace sign. The idea here is to get this peace sign to be translucent. So you can see that the white behind the hand is still showing up. So I can push delete, but that would take away the black area. So what I need to do is actually invert my selection so that the opposite of what I selected is chosen. So I will go up to my menu here, select inverse or Command-Shift-I, and now that will select the opposite of that color. And I only show that to you because with a black and white image like this, it's better to pick the black than the white so that it knows the edge. And now I'll push delete, and we can see, and I'll deselect so that our dotted lines disappear, Command D. And now when I pull my peace sign down over my black square or over the other pictures, we can see through and the white has been eliminated. Pretty cool, right? So let's move on to our next image. So let's look at our Buddha picture here. I'm actually going to bring this up so that we can work on it second in line. I just rearranged my layers there. Okay, so in this image we have a very clear 3-dimensional photograph of an icon, and my mission here is to isolate just the shape, including this little space here between its arm. That's its shape of its own. So how do we do that? Well, the new Photoshop has a very handy tool, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. But I thought I'd just quickly show you how all the different ways that we can select things. So if here we have, traditionally we would use the lasso tool, And you can see here in this diagram that the lasso tool simply circles something as you move it over. There's also what's called the polygonal lasso tool. And what this tool does is create straight lines. Pretty neat. You gotta have straight lines for that one. And then the magnetic lasso tool, which also does something pretty cool. This one traces as you go, as you move. It kind of hugs to the contrast and tries to find the edge. These are all early Photoshop techniques. It used to take lots of time to master. Thankfully, in the new versions of Photoshop, the Object Select tool. This is a tool that allows you to isolate an object using algorithmic models built into Photoshop 2022. So on our Tools menu here, you can scroll down to the Object Selection tool, or W, and then you can come over to your image as long as it's selected in the Layers panel. And you can hover over any object and it will tell you what it intends to mask or select. So if I click on this Buddha, it will take a minute to think and it will actually isolate it, just like that. Just like in our last layer with the peace sign, we don't want to simply hit delete and delete our Buddha. We want to preserve the Buddha. Command Z to go back, and I'll do the invert, which is, remember, under Select, Inverse, or Shift Command I. Shift Command I. Invert and delete will remove all the background. Command D to deselect. And that will take away your marching lines. Great. So now if I go back to my Move tool, I can move this around. And look at how those two interact. It's almost as if the peace sign is behind. With our Notan design, we're really only focusing on the black and white values, or high contrast, or yin-yang. So I want to convert this picture into that high contrast black and white values. This will become an intermediary step between this picture and our Thich Nhat Hanh Martin Luther King Jr. picture. So now that we've isolated this, we're going to apply a filter to this to convert it into more like a two-dimensional line drawing than it is a three-dimensional photograph. And here's how we do that. Over here, you'll see we have our adjustment layers. These are layers that are intended to apply non-destructive adjustments to any layer you'd like. In this case, we're going to apply a threshold filter in order to convert it to solid black and white. Scrolling over these, we see brightness, contrast, levels, curves, exposure, vibrance, hue, saturation, color balance, black and white, photo filter, channel mixer, color lookup, invert, posterize, threshold. There it is. We'll click threshold. Wow, that was a dramatic change. Let's pull this Thich Nhat Hanh MLK picture up above this filter, and you'll notice the effect will no longer take place on that picture. This is a lesson in layer hierarchy. But now we can see that our Buddha has changed quite a bit, and it's become a black and white image. So if I turn this on and off, here's how you can turn layers on and off. This was the before, and this is with the filter. So with the threshold filter, we can move this line, and we can decide on what value we'd like it. Most of the time, neither is perfect. This is too dark, and this is too light. So we have to find a middle area, maybe around there. I like to look at this graph and pick a large area where there's the most value. And then what I can do is use a very special tool to refine my outline. So I'm going to zoom in, Command plus, Command plus, Command plus, and then I'm going to move my picture up, holding down the spacebar to activate the hand tool. Holding down the spacebar, drag up, And here is our Buddha. It's still a little bit too big, so I'm going to go Command minus to move it out a little bit. Now what I'm worried about is this area here. I want to see the edge of this line. I want this to be completed. There's some empty spots that I want to fill, and I want to see more detail in this head ornament. And so what I'm going to teach you is how to do that. So if we select the layer that we want to work on, in this case it's called Buddha 2. You notice from the first video I changed my Buddha image out because it wasn't satisfying me. And then we select our burn and dodge tool. So here in the menu, if we go down to O, you can see here it's demonstrating burning will make things selectively darker. And this harkens back to old darkroom technique. The language is burning and dodging is something you do in an analog wet darkroom printing photographs. Or this one where it lightens selective areas. Pretty cool. So in this case, we're going to darken it. So we're going to pick the burn tool. And if I come in here, you can see my exposure up here is set at 10%. I'm going to change that to 50. I invite you to explore that. My midtones, I'm going to leave that there. And if I come in here, I'm actually going to zoom in a couple more times. And I'm clicking and dragging, clicking and dragging, clicking and dragging. More detail. And I can make my brush smaller by using the bracket keys. Or you can, if that's too hard to find, you can set your size here. I'm going to use the bracket keys to go smaller, smaller. Bracket out, bracket out. Bring this in. Nice. What about down here? I'm holding down space bar to get the hand tool to drag it down. Click, click, click. Oh, there, my edges are being completed. Fantastic. Maybe going to bring in a little bit more detail in the eyes. I like the eyes there. The one thing I want to show you too is that you can reverse this as well. All you need to do is go into our dodge tool instead of burn. So now I'm going to dodge. Maybe I'll make it a little smaller and thin out some of this line here. Thin it out. Or maybe some of this I want to take away. It's too strong in there. Or now I'm seeing this this piece that I want to accent. So I'll go back and I'll change it to a burn. Make it a little smaller. Get that detail in there. Very cool. Okay. So now I'm going to zoom out, Command minus, Command minus, Command minus, and it looks like my Buddha now is looking very good. I'm going to try to move it around to see what happens when I move it down over the square here. Go Command 0 to get a full size. I'm going to select my MLK and move this down so I can see. So what do we notice with the Buddha 2 as compared to the peace sign? You can see we can't see through the Buddha yet, right? So we need to apply the selection color range selection tool as we did with the peace sign to our Buddha in order for it to become translucent. So we'll go up to select, color range. We'll pick the white this time. Say OK and delete. Command D to deselect. And now, just like our peace sign, these two can interact as foreground and background elements. Pretty cool, right? What happens when we bring the Thich Nhat Hanh over on top of these guys? And we rearrange our order. All of a sudden, they're all three there in the layers. Great. So the last one I want to show you is the MLK Thich Nhat Hanh picture and how to take a photograph and do the similar thing. In this case, all I really want to do with this picture is eliminate this area and focus on these two. For any historical background, Thich Nhat Hanh is a Buddhist monk, or was a Buddhist monk, who practiced engaged Buddhism and worked alongside civil rights figures such as Martin Luther King Jr. as a way to introduce nonviolent protest during turbulent times. First off, what I would like to do is take out this microphone here and just isolate the two of them. So I'm going to use my marquee tool here. This is a very crude tool, but great for just slicing off bits. Select, delete, and it's gone. Command D to deselect. So now we've already taken off some. Cropping is a big part of this. The next tool we'll use is we'll convert this, just as we did with our Buddha picture, using the threshold filter. So with my layer selected, over to my adjustment layers, and find threshold. There it is. And instantly we have I've converted our picture into black and white. I can move my dial again, and always I like to find the area where there's quite a bit of information. If I go too dark, it's sort of indistinguishable. If I go too light, it also is. Knowing that I can use my burn dodge tool. So I'm actually going to come in here and open up their clothing a little bit. You can see that's where the most information seems to spike up. And then I'm going to go in with my burn tool, zoom in a little bit, and focus in on their faces. So maybe I want to get Thich Nhat Hanh coming in here nice and strong. So I'll go to my burn tool and make sure I'm selected on my actual layer here. It's very important. And I can come in here and click and drag. I'm clicking and dragging. And it's quite slow at this point, so if it's too slow for you, you might want to change the exposure. What happens if we go up to like 76%? Each kind of click and drag becomes more, there's more pressure. Okay. Coming in strong. You almost lose his eye there, so maybe this needs to come down. And I went too far, so maybe I reverse it to the dodge again. Pull this out. Just get his eye. Well, click and drag, click and drag. Okay, that's looking pretty good, right? What about Martin Luther King? His face is not even there. So we'll go back to the burn tool. Maybe I'll make my brush bigger. Bracket out, bracket out. You can just paint him in real quick. Click, 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 click. Okay. Do some of this on his shoulder there a little bit. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Just come in here, bracket, bracket, bracket to make it smaller. And then Command 0. Okay, now that we see this from far away, we can see that it looks like his ear is a little bit too much, so maybe we come back in, dodge it, exposure 10%, that might be good, let's see. Yeah, it's looking good. See if we can get any detail in that part. Okay, there it comes. Quick drag, quick drag. All right. Looks like we need to connect this line. That's fine. Back to the burn tool. We've connected that. This is the top of our picture, so we can't connect that. But I'm thinking it's looking pretty good. What do you think? Okay. So now we can zoom out, Command minus, and there's our Thich Nhat Hanh with Martin Luther King Jr. And we'll apply the same selective color range to this layer. So we go up to our select, color range. We want to eliminate all of the white, so we select white. Okay. And then we simply push delete. Command D to deselect to eliminate our dotted lines. And what will happen, go back to our move tool. What will happen when we move this on top? All of a sudden, all three of them are able to interact. Command 0 to go to full screen view. So congratulations, you finished video 2. You've been able to isolate your images. In the next video, we're going to talk about resizing, rotating, and placing our images on top of our square.